Hey everyone, welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture. I have with me David Whalen, who is the owner, writer, and illustrator of many comics from Corrected Hand Comics. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I appreciate you having me on.
I am excited to have you on because I like what you're doing. I think it's very interesting what you do because you've worked on things like The Offspring, Evolution, Utaro, Shady Lady, and The Loved Ones, to name a few. So I'm super excited to talk about these, but before we get into those, I am very curious how Corrected Handed Comics started.
Well, Correct Handed Comics was the brainchild of me being a left-handed person. So my whole life it was, oh, you're left-handed. Oh, that's weird. You're left-handed. Oh, weird. You're left-handed. And I started saying, no, you're right-handed. I'm correct-handed. So the idea of the logo and all that came from that. But as like a lot of people in my situation, I grew up reading comic books. Grew up knowing that I love to draw and love to create stories and characters and decided about went to school and got a teacher's degree, so I'm an elementary art teacher. So about 10 years ago said, okay, I think I'm ready to start putting some books out now, and here we are 10 years later, and I've got issue 11 of The Offspring that came out last week, multiple comic books like my 4-issue miniseries Evolution Utero, and some one-shots and some graphic novels and an actual novel with no pictures, just words. So it's been a long but good but strange road.
And let's talk a little bit about that because we're starting to see a lot of people in the indie scene starting to create their own companies and put out their own books. And so, what is that like? Because the indie comic scene in the last 5 years has really exploded.
Mm.
And I think that you were sort of at the cusp of that and even a little bit before that. So, what has that been like before we start diving into some of your works and start talking about that?
It's been little fish in a big pond trying to get bigger and bigger by by standing out and just doing hopefully quality stories and quality art and trying to get something out there that's a little bit different than what other people are getting out. So it's been fun. One of the biggest things that I've noticed that I've really liked about it is just connecting with other creators that are maybe a little bit behind what I'm doing or maybe a little bit above what I'm doing, and trying to make those connections with other creators that are in maybe not in the same boat but definitely in the same water, and trying to make those connections and growing the community of indie creators, like you said, where every day it seems like a new company or a new group or a new person puts their foot in the water, and trying to stand out as much as I can, but still still reaching out and trying to be a part of that community.
And to talk about that, because I think we're going to circle back to this and to talk some about your works, one of the first things that I want to talk about, and I love the covers on this book, is Evolution Utero. Or you can correct me on how it's said, because I think I
Evolution
mispronounced it.
Utero, yeah, Utero, Evolution Utero. Yeah, that was a fun book to do. It was the idea was I was trying to come up with just a fairly straightforward, simple superhero story, um, and it can never just be a simple superhero story. So I took the idea of a superhero and I said, what part of a superhero do we never get to see? And for me, it was their conception, their how they came into be in the most simplest terms. So, and I said, well, what's a way to be able to do that in a way that maybe hasn't been seen before? So my idea was finding a character, creating a character that was she is the worst kind of person you'd want to meet, very selfish, doesn't care about anybody else, has no goals or drive in life. A 20 something that just kind of, like so many, including myself, 20 somethings were just kind of fuddling through without any real purpose in life. And maybe even a little too mean to people along the way, if that makes sense. So my idea was, what would happen to that kind of person if they not only found out that they were going to be a parent, but be the parent of a super child. So as the fetus starts to grow inside of her, she notices weird things happening, and as the fetus starts to grow, these powers start to manifest in her also, and she starts to notice a shift, not only in the powers that she is gaining because of this super powered fetus or soon to be baby, but also her shift in her attitude towards the world around her and the people around her. So it's really the story. If anybody out there has ever been a father or a mother or a parent, they know that parenting on some level changes everybody. And I really wanted to explore that. If you had the worst kind of person in the world, how was being a parent to, or about to be a parent to, seemingly this superpowered baby, how did it change her life and how did it change her outlook on life?
And you said it yourself that stories can't be simple. And let's just say, without ruining too much here, that there are forces that are trying to work against this. And they have sort of a good reason where there's fear and some other stuff in play there. So,
Yeah,
what is that like to really even get that mother protective instinct, which
yeah.
I kind of got out of the book a little bit?
That's awesome. Yeah, and one of the things about the mom, the main character, Jenny Inaba is her name. She is oftentimes her own worst enemy. So there's the big bad of the book, and there's some time travel elements in there too. The big bad in the book, but really the enemy is sometimes Jenny, the main character, and her and the decisions that she makes that have big time consequences for her.
And then I mentioned it, and I'm a sucker for this. One of my favorite two comic covers is Spider-Man 700 and Superior Spider-Man Midtown Connecting covers.
Yeah.
And there's certain covers in these four books that connect, and they form sort of a bigger picture. So what was
Yeah.
that like? Because I'm a sucker for that with art.
It was fun, challenging, hair pulling out sometimes. Trying to the four issues, each individual issue, if you get all four issues, it makes one big giant poster. And it was really trying to figure out what to and where to and how to put all these elements into this big long poster that would not only be good covers, but also communicate the story and also communicate each character, but not give too much away of what's gonna be happening in the stories. Because there's some big shifts, there's some big turns in there that I didn't want to give away, but I wanted to be able to give the scope of the story. To be able to show that it's pretty big. Like I said, it started off simple, but it can never stay that way. So it was challenging but fun.
And you wrote and illustrated this, and I believe two people helped you color it. So what
Yeah.
was that like, being really the brainchild behind it? And I don't want to say you completely did everything on this book, but you were sort of the main driving engine behind it.
Yeah, it's always fun to be able to go from sitting on your couch and going, oh, that's not a bad idea, to kind of like starting to write it out and script it out a little bit, and then going from the script to the thumbnails and going, how long is this gonna be? Is this gonna be 2 issues, 4 issues? Is it a one shot? Is it a graphic novel that I'm gonna just put out all at once? Um, and then really getting those thumbnails onto page and then being able to see the pages come back from the amazing colorists that I had on it. It was a long process, as one might imagine, as an indie creator, because we've all got day jobs and we've all got families and we've all got other responsibilities. But from beginning to end, the whole thing was fun to be able to see it come together and be able. It was the first real big, other than The Offspring, it was the first real big story arc that I had created that as I was putting all together, going, is this gonna work? And I think it does. I think it works really well. And not only does it work as a 4 issue miniseries, it's got an ending. Um, and if you're a fan of, well, I don't know if I want to get that way. It's got an ending, but it definitely in the realms of like Back to the Future, 1 and 2, where they say to be continued. It definitely has a seed of the next storyline in there. So if so, it was a finished story from cover to cover, you get the idea of where it's going, and then at the very end, you're like, oh, I see where they can take it from here. So that was my big goal, also to give that Back to the Future type. Oh, they're not done yet, even though the story wraps itself up, but there's a germs of seeds to be able to continue the story along.
And now I bring
the book, she doesn't even have the baby. She doesn't in the first 4 issues. She doesn't even have the baby. So obviously, there's more story there, right? Sorry, Andrew, I interrupted you.
and we're gonna table that because I don't want to ruin anything just yet. We might ruin something eventually, depending on where this interview goes. But the reason why I bring up this thing about you are the main engine is because on another book that you were a part of, that you worked on, you were only the illustrator, and that was The Loved Ones. And that's,
yes.
I believe that was an issue-otic, if that's a word. I believe that was a straight graphic novel. And it was
100+ pages, straight graphic novel. It was with a guy that I worked with at another small press company called, his name's Brian Menard, and he actually has his own, we're talking about other companies, other small press companies like mine. He has his own company, Dojo Kun Comics, and you can find them on Facebook at Dojo, D-O-G-O, Kun, K-U-N, Comics. And he's a great writer. He's got a bunch of books out also. But we got together in this other smaller company, and I had this idea for kind of like a classic movie monster, but with a twist kind of story. And I thought, well, I've kind of got my hands full with some other projects. Let me see if Brian wants to work on something together. So we told him the concept, and he loved it. And he said, yeah. And we worked together for probably 3 or 4 months. Just really I had some story beats that I wanted, some images that I wanted to get out, and he had some story beats he wanted to get out. So really trying to put it all together, and I think it works really well. Again, it's a closed story from beginning to end. There's a beginning and there's an end, but again, it leaves open the idea of more. Which with the end of the characters, the way it ends, I don't know how anybody wouldn't want more of some of these characters that Brian and I kind of made. Brian actually came up with some characters that I hadn't even thought of. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, we've got to put that in there to be able to continue the story if we're able to, which I hope we will be.
So I'm going to give a little bit of context here about the story, and you can interject wherever you feel comfortable.
Sure, yeah.
Pretty much, it's a classical twist on the Monster Hunter type tale, where we have this monster hunter, and he hears these monsters have kidnapped children. It turns out that he goes to rescue them. These children are monsters themselves, and then he takes them under his wing, and then it becomes a nature versus nurture type of situation, and that age-old debate is now sort of being discussed as one of the major themes. And then there's a battle that ensues, and humanity versus the monsters, and to put it bluntly, the children monsters, I should say, so I don't know if they're technically the children of the monsters, but they're sort of at stake, and that's why reading this, more could come out of it. But that's a very interesting concept, and it kind of takes a very basic idea, because that idea isn't new, but it adds a very different twist, and there's a lot of emotion that goes into that. So what was that entire experience like, really even creating that and conveying it and taking a new spin on the idea?
Yeah, these are, I mean, you nailed it, nature versus nurture. And I think that there are a lot of parts that were surprising to me because I saw it very much as an action-adventure. But when Brian came back with some of these pages, some of the things that we knew needed to happen, I was surprised at how emotional it was. I was surprised at how much, just in the short time that I've been thinking about these characters, that they seemed like real kids with real problems. Just one of them happens to be a vampire, one happens to be a witch, one happens to be a Frankenstein's monster, one happens to be a wolf boy. And it was their struggle with, we are not from here, but we have to interact, and how people react to them, and how they react to themselves and other people around them, and how they don't seem to fit into 100% into the monster world when they do actually confront their parents. So it's, I mean, it was when I got some of the pages back from Brian, it was running on a lot of different levels, which I really liked. And like you said, leaves so much open to be able to figure out where these characters can go from there.
And one of the things, because I don't want to tackle that just yet, because I want people to go out and buy this so they can read it. But one of the things that I'm curious about, because this wasn't an issue based release, it was all released at once.
Yeah.
And I know enough about the comic industry and the graphic novel industry that there is a difference between the way things are released and how things can be worked on, and how certain things, if they're not meeting necessarily a monthly or a bi-monthly or even quarterly deadline, that they can be polished to a certain degree. So what was this release like in creating this and making sure that it was where it needed to be? Because you've done Shady Lady and then you also do The Offsprings, which we're going to get to in a minute. So what was the entire release like? Because the two books I just mentioned do have deadlines to some degree.
Yeah, it was great. Like we said, being an indie creator, Brian and I both had day jobs, so there was emails back and forth that said I'm working on it. Don't worry, I've got pages coming, or whatever the problem was, or oh my gosh, I've got to go to this tonight and this week's this is happening. So you might not see pages in a couple of days. It was a long process, and it being something that did not need to come out issue for issue by issue. Knowing that it was just 100 plus pages, and when we got it, was kind of not relaxing, because it's very stressful to try to get it out quickly, because it's something that's going to work. But it was, once it finally did come out after a pretty good solid period of working on it and tweaking here and tweaking there, it was definitely a weight off my shoulders to be able to get it out. And then the reaction of some of the people who have read it, who have seen it, not just the cover, but the to be able to read through it, and to write me back and say, some of these kids reminded me of me when I was that age, because it's 10-ish, 11, 12-ish, so preteens. So to be able to have some people react to it the way they did was amazing. Knowing that people were reacting to it the same way that I was, really really gave me a lot of confidence in my conceptual ideas and my drawing, and my writing. Brian wrote it, but in the idea of being able to connect with people emotionally about these characters that happen to have monster parents.
And we're going to leave it at that, because I don't want to ruin any more. I have a feeling that at some point you're going to revisit this and circle back into it in some way or another way. And before we get to
some ideas, I've already got some ideas to be able to add on to the story, to be able to get these kids in there. And there's four main kids that start the book, and it grows as it goes. So I've definitely got some ideas to be able to continue the story with these kids.
And now I want to talk about your one shot that you just recently did before we get to The Offsprings, which is the flagship, and that was Shady Lady. And what I like about Shady Lady is it's noir, it's done in that style, it's done in very much a 21st century style. It definitely focuses on that, and we don't really see stories that highlight the 21st century and analyze it. We see stuff thrown back to the 20th or even the 1800s, and in the indie comic realm, we see stuff in the future or in the past. We don't really see many things in the present. And so what made you want to do a story in the present versus going, I guess, the traditional route of what everybody else is doing?
Yeah, you nailed it. There's a lot going on right now. So there's a lot of fuel for the fire, being positive or negative. So when I have probably 3 or 4 one-shots in the works right now. I'm halfway through another one-shot that I hope to have out before the end of summer. But this is the one I wanted to start with. And I would say this was probably the easiest book to be able to kind of get through, because the story just fell into place so easily. Like you said, it's a noir thriller, but with a strong female lead. And the female lead is I love characters who have problems, who aren't perfect, who aren't just there to swoop in and save the day. I like characters that are trying to do their best while helping other people who maybe need a little help along the way. So they're not only helping other people, in the process they're helping themselves also to try to be able to grow and change and be a better person and people and get past their own issues, because everybody's got them. To be able to get past their own issues in a successful way, which is harder than, everybody knows that's hard. So with the Shady Lady, she was definitely a character that I ripped from the headline. She's not based off of anybody in particular, but she definitely was the way to go as a protagonist of the story, just because of the simple way that she is able to completely 360 her issue that she has in her life. So as she's doing that, and it kind of unfolds slowly as the book goes, what her issue is, what the struggle that she's going through in her life, and as she's doing it, she's kind of helping people as she goes, kind of like The Fugitive or Incredible Hulk or Quantum Leap. They're kind of righting wrongs as they go throughout their own journey, which was an aspect that I really wanted to do. But with Shady Lady too, it was an attempt for me to be able to, or a chance for me to be able to do a different genre, very much a noir thriller in the realms of like Frank Sinatra and Suddenly. I don't know if any of the viewers have ever seen that movie, but a big Frank Sinatra fan. And if you ever get a chance to see the movie Suddenly, it's that quiet, slow burn of just intensity, growing and growing and growing throughout the movie. That I kind of wanted to see if I could pull it off, and I think I did. I think it worked out really well, and I think it's a strong story, and again, lends itself to be able to have more stories with this character.
And to talk about one shots, because you got a bunch of them coming, as you just mentioned, and hopefully, I think we're going to talk about it. It should be hopefully out before the end of summer or in the middle of summer. But what is it like to create a one shot? Because obviously it's a very, I don't want to say short story, but it's a very, very micro contained story versus over a mini series or even a 100-page graphic novel or The Offsprings, which is now going on to its 11th issue. So how do you plan that out? Because clearly everything needs to fit in.
Yeah, it's you definitely have to hone in on the message fairly quickly. You might get 1 to 2 pages, or maybe even 1 or 2 panels, to be able to show the audience who this character is and their motivations for doing what they're doing. No matter what that character is, whether it's a good guy, the bad guy, a male character, a female character, a child. So really trying to hone in on the story, on the character itself, and trying to find in a page or maybe even just a couple panels who that character is and why they should care, why the reader should care about them at all. I have one that's coming out called I Won't Stop, and it is the most superhero book I've ever put out, and it's just I think it's a good solid story of what if a superhero goes through a trauma in their life that's so unfixable, how would that superhero react to it? They have these amazing powers, they have these amazing things they can do, but they can't be everywhere all the time. So how does a superhero deal with trying to be everywhere at once and trying to not only save everybody, but again, in the process, try to save themselves from the trauma that they've been through? And that's coming out, hopefully, by the end of summer.
And we're going to table that because I think that sells everything. And I'll give you a chance to promote it in a little bit. But I do want to talk about this flagship comic that you have, and that's The Offspring. And I think this is a hell of a banger of a comic. I think it's fascinating. I believe you can pick it up in 2 volumes. So if you want the first 5 and then the second 6 to 10 are out in graphic novel format. And then issue 11, is it out or is it coming out in a week?
Issue 11 just came out last week.
So it came out last week, so you can immediately get access to all 11 issues pretty quickly. So what does this comic cover? Because people are probably hearing about this for the first time.
Yeah.
on my page and elsewhere, and a bunch of groups that I'm about to post it in. So
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. The Offspring being an ongoing series, it gives you a chance to kind of branch out and do a whole bunch of different kinds of stories as you go. And for me, the concept of the Offspring was just that, trying to weave in different ideas and different genres under the umbrella of these three children who have real world problems. Their lives are not great and have not been great. They were all physically or mentally or emotionally abused as children. They wind up together in this alternative school where they grow up into their teens and into their early 20s, and they come to realize that they have a very special connection to each other, but they don't know why yet. So we meet up in issue one with all three characters coming back together at the lowest point of their lives. They've all had trauma that a lot of people would have problems dealing with. So one of the characters, Sarah, is just getting out of jail. One of the characters, Vince, doesn't, again, I don't want to spoil anything, but doesn't really think he wants to be here anymore, if that makes sense. And Will, the character, has kind of lost his road. Will is probably the most grounded character of all three. He's genius level intelligence. He works at the school that took him in when he was shipped away from his parents. So he's got a grounding that the other two characters don't have. But we start to see little cracks in the foundation as the story progresses. We start to see his issues with anger, his issues with abandonment as he goes on. So as we move through the first two volumes, we start to see these characters get not only confronted with their pasts and how they deal emotionally with their past, but they also, for some reason, and I explain it as we go through this next story arc, for some reason they're being challenged by these uh, devils, bad guys, supernatural entities, things that are coming out of the woodwork that they've never had to deal with before. So my joke is my two sentence thing is they're fighting their demons on the inside and on the outside.
and
So
one of
we're
the
starting
things I
to
like about this is that this story started out in the first 5 issues one way, and in my opinion, in when I read it, and I read it quickly, I'll add, so maybe I missed a few things, but what I found is that I found that it was going one way, and then in volume two, which is 6 to 10, it shifts, and I haven't picked up issue 11 yet, but issue 10 ends on a very interesting note, and I feel that we almost turned the corner, and it wasn't a route I was expecting it to take. And
Yeah,
so,
again, yeah. That's something that I wanted to do to be able to not only keep myself engaged in it because I love these characters. They're like real people to me. They're people that are based off of their characters are based off of people that I grew up with, and people that I still know today on some level. And I won't name names, but they're characters that I really think have the ability to be able to hold the story for 1,000 issues if I could ever get there. But you're absolutely right that the twists and turns that I have in it definitely takes it from sci-fi to thriller to horror to action adventure to be able to kind of weave in those different genres as I go. After I finish the next story arc, issue 11, 12, and 13, we go on a road trip. So it's going to kind of shift again to be able to have these characters have their individual moments to shine in this road trip, where again, certain supernatural problems arise, and it's again all based off of how they individually see the world, and then how they come together to be able to help each other solve the problems.
well, unfortunately, we're not going to talk any more about this because I don't want to ruin anything for anybody. Because I have a feeling if we keep going, because I could go through the entire thing, and I'm not that guy. So,
I can talk
having
about it all day, so yes, it's probably a good idea to stop right
so
there.
having said that, I do want to talk about something else that is more on the business and technical side of the indie comics scene and the comic scene in general. Because for those who have been living under a rock, and it's hard to live under a rock in today's time, COVID 19 has kind of torpedoed the entire entertainment sector and the con scene. Since Emerald City Comic Con, every con has either been postponed or canceled or punted or whatever else you want to put an acronym in there. And the latest one was San Diego Comic Con. So I'm very curious how that is affecting you, because in many ways, maybe not at San Diego, maybe even not at New York Comic Con, but at a lot of smaller cons, there's a big indie scene. And I don't know how many cons you go to, but that market to gain new fans and to attract new people and first time buyers just walking by, a lot of publishers rely on that. So I'm very curious how you are adjusting to that scene right now.
Yeah, it's been weird there. I'm up in a very rural area of upstate New York, so my biggest obstacle to getting the book out in conventions and comic book shops is you point in any direction, and the nearest comic book shop is an hour and a half away in any direction. So, and then comic conventions, there are some really good comic conventions up here throughout the year when they're not being canceled, of course. So I've been able to get out and really communicate with a lot of great indie creators and be able to get the word out of all the titles that I have at all these conventions. Now that they're not going on, it's being able to connect with, like I probably never would have connected with you, Andrew, if it wasn't for this
A lot of
stay at
people
home.
wouldn't have.
Because a lot of people in my situation are really looking out for people that do what you do, to be able to really connect with other creators and be able to do what we normally do at a convention, but in this different scenario. So I'm really thankful for people like you, Andrew, that come in and really give indie creators a chance to be able to talk about what they're doing. So thank you.
Well, I'll be in full disclosure. This thing started on March 25th. I've spoke about this on other Facebook Live interviews as well, where I realized that I'm a big wrestling fan and I'm a big comic fan, and I realized those two industries were getting decimated across the board. And I don't want to say pessimistic, but the earliest that I think this can even possibly recover is September. And I think that's me being extremely optimistic. And that's not to say that as humanity we're not going to get over COVID-19. I don't want to create fear here, because we will get over this virus. There is no doubt about that. It's just that when will people feel safe? And that's my question to you to some degree, is that how do you think the con scene is going to change for both fans attending, because I attend a lot of cons, and even the creator side, and then even going beyond that, what do you think that kind of the next step for creators is? Because I think that the digital scene is going to grow out of this tremendously.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that conventions will come back. Conventions, maybe not in the same way that they were before. I mean, if you've ever been to New York Comic Con, it's wall to wall.
Oh, that's a rough one.
Crazy,
One time,
awesome.
I got a story about this. I got my Saga 1 sign there.
Oh,
So,
nice.
by both Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. It's graded. It's an amazing book, but one and done is good for me.
I met Joe Kubert at, I don't remember when it was, how many years ago it was now, but that was one of the highlights of my New York Comic Con. I've been a few times, and just to be able to walk around, to be able to see all the great stuff going on, to be able to talk to creators and retailers, and I need that statue. Oh, I'm looking for this comic book. I haven't been able to find it. You can find it. So I think that seeing like that kind of stuff, like toy sales, comic book sales, it's definitely gonna grow the digital market as far as that stuff goes. But I think conventions will come back, hopefully sooner than we think. Fingers crossed. I don't want to jinx it or anything. But you're probably right. Around September, I think, is probably when it's going to start getting to be what we would consider normal. Hopefully even better than what it was. I mean, hopefully this will create a better understanding of communication, a better understanding of the want for people to have face-to-face communication with each other, to be able to not take for granted going outside and talking to other people. Would be one of my hopes for it.
My opinion on this, and I've made this clear, is that I think cons need to evolve. I've been saying it for years, where I think that this is going to force an evolution. I think it's going to force an evolution on cap rates. I was speaking with Anime Next, which is an anime con, and we were speaking about this concept called con crud, which means that one person has something, you're all together, you have 25,000 people, you're all staying in the same hotel. That thing's going to run through everybody if it's infectious enough. And so I think that the future of all this is that I think cons are going to have to adapt. I think they're going to have to maybe even have less retailers to some degree and have more open space aisles and actually have attendance caps and things like that, because I think this is going to change the way things are done. But I also think that, I think things like the indie comics are going to become bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're starting to see that because just alone in Facebook groups in the indie market have skyrocketed in the last 2 months. And so I think that's something what's going to happen. But having said all that and talking about promoting, I would like to give you an opportunity to promote yourself, because you got a lot of books. You got a novel that we didn't even talk about. You got, I think, 5 one-shots that you're working on, if I remembered hearing it, and one of them should be out middle of summer. So where can people find this stuff and buy it? That's what we really want to do, is sell some stuff of yours right now.
Yeah, you can find links to all my books on correcthandedcomics.com. There are links to every single book I sell, and even some preview stuff. There's some insider stuff here that I don't put on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. You can find some of that different stuff on Facebook at Correct Handed Comics. On Twitter, you can find us at Handed Correct. So I had to kind of flip it there. On Twitter at Handed Correct, or The Offspring has its own Twitter feed at The Offspring 00. Like I said, I have issues 1 through 11 of The Offspring out and ready to go for sale on print and digital. If you're a digital fan, you can grab that also. You can get the volume 1 of The Offspring right here. This is issues 1 through 4. I've got a lot of great feedback on it, and I love the feedback, and I love hearing people going, "Now, wait, why did you do this? Why is this character doing that?" And I just kind of say, don't worry, it's gonna, it'll be under, you'll see why they did that in a little bit. And then volume 2, issues 5 through 10, are out and ready to go. I don't have I'm out of all my print copies of that one, which is great. And then issue 11 just came out last week. I have my 4-issue miniseries, Evolution Utero, in print and digital, and you can find links on correcthandedcomics.com. Our 100-plus page graphic novel, The Loved Ones, about the children of classic movie monsters, which we talked about. And then Shady Lady is out. It came out in January. And that's a 24-page one-shot, and you can find that in print and digital. Links on my website, correcthandedcomics.com also. Coming out in the next few months, issue 12 and 13 to finish up this season of The Offspring. So it's going to finish up the storyline that issue 11 started. And then I'm hoping again at the end of summer and then into fall to get 2 one-shots out. One is I Won't Stop, which is the superhero one that we talked about. And then I have another one coming out. I have a working title. I'm not quite happy with the working title yet, so I'm going to have to think about the working title. But as a school teacher, I'm surrounded by kids all day. And one day I found myself in my classroom walking around and checking for understanding and all that stuff. And it popped in my brain, what if aliens were to attack right now? What would happen? So that's going to be the third one-shot. So keep an eye out for that one. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm walking around the classroom. If aliens were to attack, would I have a group of second graders in my room? so that's fun.
And to go even further beyond that, and you mentioned some of it already, but what is your social media? Because support is just not economics anymore. It's following on social media. So does Corrected Hand Comics have a Facebook page? Do they have a Twitter handle? Do they have an Instagram?
So Facebook is at Correct Handed Comics. My Twitter, I have 2 of them. One for Correct Handed Comics and is Handed Correct, at Handed Correct. And then one individual one for The Offspring, which is at The Offspring 00. Not to get it confused with the great 90s band, 90s 2000 band The Offspring. and on Instagram, David.Whalen dot 1614. And you can find us on Instagram. Also on Instagram, I put a lot of different stuff, a lot of process stuff, a lot of this is a character I'm working on, and it's rough pencils, or it's rough thumbnails, or it's a just a poster that I'm working. I just finished a He-Man poster, because I'm a big He-Man fan from the 80s that I just finished. So I was putting the process of creating from thumbnails to pencils to inks to colors of that He-Man. And a lot of likes on it. People really liked it, and I'm happy because I really liked it too. But I forgot one thing, my book. So I have an actual book with no pictures. I'm a big Western fan, so you can find a link to that on our website, also correcthandedcomics.com. It's called The Last Ride to Tyburn, and it is a classic Western, but it is set up in a way that each issue is its own individual story, where each individual character gets their chance to shine, and weird things happen to them that you probably wouldn't usually see in a Western. Again, I'm trying to like mix those genres, but it's shootouts, and it's bad guys and good guys, and it's pretty girls, and it's hangings, and it's weird, wild stuff happening in it. So The Last Ride to Tyburn, you can find a link to my book on correcthandedcomics.com. Also, check it out. I think it's a fun read, and I enjoyed writing it.
Well, there you have it, everybody. You have all the social links. You have all the information. Everything is on David's website at Corrected Hand Comics. So definitely check that out. And go buy his comic work. Go check it out. Definitely support. You know, again, I keep on saying it. I've been saying it in every single one of these Facebook Live interviews that I do. Support now is not just buying something. It's also following people on Twitter, checking out any product they have, because it's all algorithm based, and buying a product is just as important as liking something on somebody's Twitter. So go do that, go buy it, go enjoy some comics. The next 2 days, I have 2 more interviews coming out. I have a wrestler coming out tomorrow night at 7 o'clock for those watching right now or checking this out at a later date. Of Ariel Nix, and we're going to be talking about Pop Funkos, which is going to be an awesome conversation. I'm super stoked. And then I'm having another comic writer, hopefully on Thursday, and I might be sneaking somebody else in, hopefully on Saturday, to replace somebody who was supposed to be here, but we had to reschedule that for next week, Saturday the 16th. So definitely stay tuned. A lot more is coming. The goal, just so everybody knows, is to do 40 plus of these by the end of June, and we're getting pretty close to that number, and we might even break that number at the end of May at this rate. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me. Before we go, Andrew, you said you're a wrestling fan. Have you been watching AEW or WWF or both?
So for everybody can shoot me on the air. So I divide my time between SmackDown and AEW just because my certain weeks are more complicated, and then also I'm a big Impact Wrestling fan.
Oh yeah, my daughter and I have been watching AEW on Wednesday Night Dynamite, and we just get the biggest kick out of Orange Cassidy.
Orange Cassidy is
very,
very interesting.
I did not give him a plug, I know, but my daughter and I have been watching him. We're just dying laughing with that guy. So yeah, so we've been enjoying that, and I haven't watched wrestling really in any real way since the early 2000s. But watching Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy has been a bit hootenanny on Wednesdays.
Orange Cassidy is the greatest asset for AEW. But on that note, we're going to have a separate Orange Cassidy conversation off the air. And so let everybody know that as I could talk about Orange Cassidy for the next hour, and I'm going to spare everybody that position. So stay tuned, though, everybody, for tomorrow and Thursday.
Thanks, Andrew, for having me on.